G'day there, Anthony James here for The Regeneration, with the stories that are changing the story towards the regeneration of life on this miracle of a planet. Brought to you by listeners like you. Do subscribe if you can and help keep the show on the road. We're off to Parliament House in Canberra today, but don't let that turn you off. The Regenerative Food and Farming Alliance has just launched there. Formed by many a guest on this podcast over the years, though one woman behind it all, and so much else, is someone I've been looking forward to having on the podcast since we met a few years ago. Rebecca Gorman is a highly respected former journalist turned farmer, philanthropist and company director. Beck has been a key driver in bringing this alliance together, and she joins me now. Beck, how are you feeling?
Excited, really excited and surprisingly motivated. And I guess I say surprisingly because, you know, the idea of fronting up to Parliament House with a whole package of policy ideas and schlepping them around to parliamentarians who are, you know, overworked and over-talked at, and sitting in estimates this week, and leadership spills about to occur. You know, they've got a lot on their mind, and they always have a lot on their mind. They've always got people at their door saying, you know, can I have your ear? And then could you implement the thing that I'm suggesting with with money and sort of, you know, program details all wrapped up. So you turn up knowing that you're about to put pressure on people, and that's not always comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, most of us, particularly in the regen world, you know, we're kind of trying to be focused on the sort of energy that we carry around with us and that we impose on the land and impose on other people and impose on ourselves.
Yeah, which is, on the one hand, a kind of a, what would you say? I'll just draw on a term from the scene, a low stock handling approach. Like you're gentle, no? So, but in some ways you've got to be forceful in different contexts. I suppose it's just that ebb and flow and you're sensing when and where to do what's appropriate.
Oh, well, if you're speaking of, you know, low stress stock handling, low stress stock handling doesn't mean no pressure stock handling.
There you go. Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean that you don't bring some pressure to bear. I think that's the idea. You just want to do it in a way that's not aggressive but really helpful.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. So you took the punt and you went in there and you launched this thing last night. You're back home now, do I take it?
No, in a hotel room, actually borrowing Emma Kate and Robert from the Food Connect, borrowing their room because they're staying an extra night, borrowing their room because we've been in meetings all day and they've gone off to a couple of more meetings, and we've got one later with one of the departmental people, and so I've borrowing their room. So I'm about to do the drive home, you know, probably about 7:00 tonight, and I'll have some time for reflection.
Yeah, you can listen to yourself back on the podcast. I'll have a
God.
Yeah, dread the thought, huh? Who wants to do that? So take us back into the launch last night then, blow by blow. Like, how did it happen?
Well, there's terrific people working in this group. So the steering committee group is, well, as I mentioned, Emma, Kate and Robert from Food Connect in Brisbane. They're an amazingly innovative, collaborative food hub up there. And then there's Soils for Life, which is a non-profit organisation focused on soil health. Then there's the Holistic Management Cooperative, and we do ecological monitoring and holistic management training and collaboration. The Open Food Net and the Open Food Network, which is you know, the wonderful Serenity Hill and company, creating greater equity for the distribution of this kind of food, and then Sustainable Table, which is trying to direct much more investment into the small businesses that are small and large businesses that are trying to transform this area. So there's a lot of, a great gang involved on the steering committee. And we recruited an amazing young woman, Georgina Johnson, who's doing lots of work in various parts of the regenerative ag movement and beyond. And she has a very good stock whip that she used to get us all going. She's fabulous. And so really there was just lots of logistics to organise a barbecue in the Speaker's courtyard in Parliament House. Really beautiful position. And we had a fantastic night. And the idea was, well, we will bring farmers, we'll bring, a set of policy ideas. We will bring Grant Sims, who started Vic No-Till, or one of the first presidents of Vic No-Till, an incredibly innovative farmer from Victoria. He gave a PowerPoint presentation, and that PowerPoint presentation is kind of knocks your socks off, really. There's,
Those two
spider
things
web.
don't often go hand in hand, PowerPoint and knock your socks off. So
No,
it's a
no,
fair
that's
effort.
true. That is true. That is true. He just has so many fantastic photos of, the before and afters across
Yeah.
the fence lines. Just the amount of biomass that you
Hmm.
can grow on a low rainfall by encouraging soil biology.
Hmm.
And he's got a, incredibly energetic way of sharing that information. Lots of fabulous photos. And even though it was, estimates had been sitting all day, and I think was continuing to sit as we were there, we actually had a lot of politicians come through and join us for that section. We tried to keep it as brief as possible because
Yeah.
we know how busy they are. But a lot of them stayed. A lot of the advisors, a lot of the independents came through. David Pocock was there. But one of the great things was the Ag Minister Julie Collins came and launched it for us,
Oh, wonderful.
and of course the Speaker opened it for us. So we had a really generous roll up from those
Terrific.
guys. I mean, I think it's the people's house. They represent us. However, as I have mentioned before, gee, they've got a full book all day long.
Yeah.
So, but we had fantastic food, local food, and everyone stayed until it was time to sort of kick everybody out. We had to be kicked out. So apart from having this great interaction with politicians and their advisors, it was also a terrific night of, I guess, representatives of the movement just getting together. And of course, people there who have been, the really early adopters who are, have been stalwarts of the process, and they keep turning up because they know that you have to hear this stuff multiple times sometimes before it makes sense. So it was
Yeah.
a fantastic night. Then we all kicked on to the pub together, and some of the advisors were there as well, and they kept, so the conversation kept going because, as you know, it's an intoxicating idea
Oh.
that we can continue to grow our food and enhance nature in the process, that we don't have to
Yes.
do the trade-offs. We don't have to do side by sides. We can layer this production on top of really beautiful quality ecosystem repair. And there's no
Right.
doubt, I don't think we need to try to mount the case that we have lost a huge amount of soil, we've got erosion, we've got biodiversity loss. We know all of those things, but how you go about repairing that, well, that's the tougher thing. There's a huge amount of
Mm.
culture that is in between the acknowledgement of that and the repair of it.
Yeah, and therein is the opportunity. So you get a sense then, do you, Beck, that I don't know, would I say appetite for it is there from the sort of spread of people you saw there last night, that you're not having to bang down doors?
No, No, we saw both the agriculture minister today and the environment minister, and a number of independents and a number of local regional MPs and senators. They're interested in the solutions
Yeah.
that help them with their communities. Because
Right.
if you just bring it down to that simple community level, then you've got people managing farms, for example, with a whole lot of barriers that get put in their way all the time, from regulatory issues to high input costs, to just access to facilities like abattoirs.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know that's a
Yeah.
big problem, that you can really only be, unless you're close to an abattoir that's happy to give you a small kill space, you pretty much have to stick to the commodity producer
Mm.
route. Or if you're, there sort of isn't another way around it. I think Victoria have just changed their legislation, though. I think they're moving on it.
Yep.
But there's multiple barriers, and that's even before you get to these extreme weather events that we just seem to be having a lot of
Right on.
at the
Yeah, I want to
moment.
come back to that actually. But I wonder, does the appetite extend to a media presence? I mean, this harks back to your previous life too. Was there media there too? And I guess even, I don't know, other representative bodies from the regions and farmers and so forth?
Yeah, there was some media there. The land was there. Good on them. And so not much other media. Quite a bit went out. The minister put it out on her social media account. And we're working on some other media ideas. I think if you're asking the question about appetite, I think what is changing, there was a time, as you know, when you couldn't really use that word regenerative because it was considered to be touchy-feely, not attending to the needs of meeting the demand of the growing global population and so forth. But I think we're getting beyond that, because regardless of what you call it, we can worry about the semantics of it. You can be potato and I can be potato, but it doesn't really matter what we call this thing. If it's
Mm.
climate smart agriculture, regenerative agriculture, even, I mean, sustainability needs a little bit of a challenge because we can't sustain a degenerating system. But we can call it repair. You can call it whatever you like after you've acknowledged that we've got difficulties and problems and losses. So I think there is an appetite that for acknowledging that, and for saying, okay, well, let's have a look at what you've got on offer. And nothing that we're putting on the table is anything new, really. And in the whole
Yes.
scheme of producing food over millennia. And I think that's where I come back to some of the, a cultural question. We have been so locked in, our food producers have been locked in on the highway of a particular style of production that is needed by the processors further upstream. And they've got their own reasons for doing that. They've got economies of scale that they've got to operate under in order to be good exporters. There's a whole lot of things along that supply chain that mean we produce food. We're being asked to produce food in the way that we do. And so we're just offering a suite of ideas that say, okay, well, what if you had a bit more choice to be able to still produce for that supply chain, but also, let's say, produce for your local supply chain,
Mm.
or still produce for that supply chain, but in a way that reduces your debt, reduces your inputs, gives you a bit more freedom, adds biodiversity, improves your water retention. These things, they're not really controversial.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, Beck, I'd love to segue just sort of to the side for a bit to talk about what brought you to this place, because You, I gather, have gone through some pivots and transformations yourself in life to arrive here. And I do recall reading at some stage that you were, what was the word you used? Underwhelmed when you asked a neighbour about how to do this holistic grazing thing. Because for the response you received. Um, and yet, here you find yourself. But even if it's further back than that,
Mm.
what were the nexus points that really shifted your life that have summed to finding you at Parliament House last night launching this?
Gosh, isn't they're great questions, and I love hearing people's answers to this because it's so instructive, isn't it? For
Isn't it?
it and the spaghetti of our lives. That
Right.
when you start unraveling pulling one end of the string. Look, the quick background is I grew up on a farm south of Wagga at a little place called Huron Creek. uh, Classic farming, mixed farming enterprise, big family, youngster five. We just had a cracking childhood there and had cousins all around, and the school bus was full, and we just had a great time, and we all look back on that as just a brilliant time, dirty and free. That was our life, right? But busy. You were working, but you were out there. But my dad died when I was about 8,
Oh,
and we kept the farm for another 10 years. With my mother working off farm, and we worked with a manager and a share farmer, a beautiful manager, John Cocking, in the end, who carried it through to the end. And in about 1982, the really bad drought hit then. And by that stage, my mother had taken up a job as she was Wagga's first social worker.
huh.
And then she ended up in Sydney working for the New South Wales state government in social planning. And so she decided to sell the farm, much to the sort of anguish of all the children and especially my two brothers. But she said, "Look, there's 5 of you. I'm not going to saddle my 2 boys with a huge debt paying off their sisters, and I'm not just going to give it to you for free. And by the way, I'm only what, 50 or
Yeah.
less. I've still got to,
Yeah.
I've still got to live." So we all scattered and did our own things. And in some ways, I mean, not all of us, but I think one brother and myself in particular felt we sort of had unfinished business on the farm. And so I went off and I was a journalist and had a fabulous career in journalism. You know what it's like. You've got permission to ask people
Yes.
just so many questions about their life, and if you're curious, it's a really fantastic career. So, and then at some stage, I thought, you know what, if I'm ever going to go back to that life, I've got to make it happen. And about the same time, we had kept in touch with Martin Royds, who is a bit of a celebrated farmer in the regenerative ag movement,
Mm,
and a wonderful, generous character. And he was
yes.
one of my brother's great friends. And
Huh.
we kept in touch with him as he went from his transition from that dry erosion gully of a farm that he inherited and transformed it into, one of the showcase farms in Australia, and I'd say probably, globally.
Yep.
So that when we had those awful bushfires, 2019 and 20, the helicopters were dipping into his chain of ponds as to fight the fires because water resources had dried up elsewhere. So I
Isn't
mean,
that something?
you've met him. He's a fabulous character. Anyway, once
Oh.
once you've been in the Ute with Martin cruising around his farm, I used to get out and I'd be buzzing. My hands would be kind of shaking, and I'd be just all psyched up. I think, and I just got to a moment in time where I thought I could actually do that.
Yeah, well.
Like, I don't want to be driving tractors. I don't want to be mixing chemicals. I don't want to be doing that stuff because I'll get it wrong. I'll make the wrong calculations and put too much of one thing in the wrong spot. And I'm not into, I actually quite like driving the tractor, but outside of that, it's just I don't want to sit on it all day going backwards and forth. I could do this. And then, my fabulous husband, John Sevior, he jumped on board and said, yep, let's do it. And we engaged because there was a different way of doing it. So started holistic management training, bought this farm down between Gundagai and Wagga, started holistic management training, were trained by a bunch of great people. Mark Gardner was the first person holistic management educator who I met, and he was there last night and remains just a quietly wonderful operator, training people, encouraging people. And then Brian Welberg, who is probably Australia's most prolific holistic management educator. I then went on to do probably 3 courses of the holistic management course in 3 variations, I think, with him. And so, but of course, once you've got your journalist hat on and you meet a good idea that solves some difficult, wicked, as Val Brown has pointed out, the wicked problems of the world, and you come across some sort of answers to that. And then you meet these incredible people in it, and you think, gosh, what can we do to elevate that, to round that up and move that along? Because this is great. These people are living great lives, making a profit, building nature. But I guess just to answer that point that you made about being a bit underwhelmed by it, it was one of my neighbours, Nick Austin, who I said to him, so holistic management, what's it really about? Tell me about your grazing. I thought holistic management was rotational grazing.
Yeah.
But of course, and Nick said to me, well, actually, it's about making better decisions, actually. And I thought, oh my God, how embarrassing. I mean, can't you make good decisions?
That's right. I've got your quote here, I think. Feeling privately that I could make perfectly decent decisions. Thank you very much. That's what you said. But I guess there were echoes going off in your mind, huh? You're like,
Yeah. Well, I think we can all make perfectly good decisions. But usually those decisions have a kind of finite circle around them. And when you start working with ecosystems that they have very shaggy, weird shaped perimeters. And one small intervention somewhere might trigger a huge unintended consequence somewhere else. And it's very hard to know where that might occur. So if you're trying to say, okay, I want to improve this ecosystem, will this decision lead to an improvement in that ecosystem? And the great thing that holistic management offers, and I think the other practices of regenerative agriculture have this similar, maybe they don't have the 7 testing questions matrix of holistic management, but they've got this same kind of idea and energy about reflecting on it. Once you've got that matrix that says, okay, excuse me, is it going to attend to the root cause? Are you actually attending to a symptom or a root cause? If it's about a weed, are you getting it at the right time in its cycle? Is it going to cost you money or make you money? How's your gut feel about it? How are your neighbours going to feel about it? How do all the other influential people in the organisation feel about it? And once you've answered those questions, and they don't need to take a long time, you usually, if you go tick, 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 cross, it just gives you a really, it stops you for a moment to say, am I actually really making the right decision?
Yeah.
And so it did turn out to be, it's fantastic, the decision-making framework.
Yeah. There's a person that you also came across in literature who I came across too, and that's David Fleming. I'd love you to talk about how that hit you and has influenced you. And then we can pick up the story of how you've
got back to Parliament.
Yeah.
Wow, David Fleming, Surviving the Future. Uh, what bookstore did I find it in? I don't know. It's a Chelsea Green publication, I believe, and they do lots of great ones. Yeah, I don't even know where I found it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I read it and it was so joyful
Hmm.
and so clever. Oh, is that the way to describe it? It was.
I think it is in part, but yes, I hear you.
Look, I think he was so insightful and thoughtful about understanding the cycles and say the rituals that go with a year, that with the seasonal year, with understanding this notion of root cause analysis
Hmm.
and with understanding the forces that work on us, that drive us in particular ways, and that modern economies have asked us to live in particular ways for certain outcomes. Um, but I think the key thing that was great about David Fleming is that he added the word carnival.
Oh,
I don't
funny.
know if you read, the
Yeah.
subtitle is
Culture, carnival, and capital
that's it.
in the aftermath of the market economy.
Yeah. Culture, carnival, and capital in the aftermath of the capitalist,
Of the market economy.
of the market economy, not
Yeah.
not the capitalist economy,
Yeah.
the market economy. And look, you might um, he's suggesting there that there's an inevitability to uh, the decline of the market economy. And look, I'm not attached to that one way or the other. He's an economist. He was, well, I don't know, was he actually an economist? I think I think he was a polymath. So if we sort of set that inevitability as he saw it aside, the idea of carnival running
Mm.
alongside culture and capital was just, I think, so powerful because we have stripped carnival out of so much that we do, and particularly in agriculture. And there are hard workers all over the place, right? And farmers are exceptionally hard workers, like long hours
Yeah.
in the yards, long hours in paddocks, in tough working conditions. And so it's easy to forget that you've got to have fun. You've
Mm.
got to be joyful together. You've got to create opportunities to actually celebrate amongst yourselves. And it can often be hard to do because a culture that's flippant and joyful might not support a serious professional agricultural enterprise. But
Well, that's it. It's not the mutual exclusivity, is it? I'm reminded of what you said at the top about your upbringing, and you hear that a lot. Back before, maybe partly anyway, back before there was such pressures, there was such centralization of processing facilities in that big market economy, and obviously before symptoms of a way of agriculture certainly applied to this land, but obviously not only after colonization that really started to bite in these cascading disasters you referred to earlier as well. But there's no, like, you've experienced, and so have many others, the coherence of the idea of carnival with farming and with producing. So it shouldn't be beyond us. It's within very recent and, in your case, embodied memory that life on the land can be like that.
mm. And I think that there's of course lots of things that people do on the land that are are joyful. I think it's just the sort of structure, the extremely pressured
Yes.
structure of culture of the agricultural economy
Yeah.
that means you have to that it's hard to make sure that you slow down enough to celebrate. And of
Mm.
course we one of our children went to a Steiner school during primary school. And one of the things that Rudolf Steiner talks about is the importance of celebrating the seasons.
Mm.
and the, Harvest Festival and Spring Festival.
Mm.
And we've stripped all that out of agriculture, and we've stripped that out of even the way our food gets delivered, because we no longer really, even though a lot of great chefs have worked hard to talk about eating in a seasonal way, we don't need to. We can have anything whenever we want it, really.
Mm.
Mangoes, maybe.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, we're seeing public health consequences though of the same farming system as well, aren't we? So
mm,
it's not like that's necessarily a benefit in a big sense. So I'm with your old journalist hat on too, Beck, and still following the thread of how you came to be here. Like, I'm gathering you've applied, as you have been in this scene for a bit and then been around and been on certain boards and so forth, that you have examined what works in terms of change, in terms of people working together, in terms of people shifting policy. All these things now that the Alliance is operationalizing, I gather you have seen on your journey that this is potentially a missing part of things that can work, can shift the dial.
one of the crucial pieces in this for me has been being a part of a fantastic farm management group that had a name when I arrived into it, called the Eight Families. They were about to do a sort of direct marketing of their produce, and so they'd created a name and a marketing program and a brand and so forth, that ultimately they decided not to do. But about that time, I came along and was very, very generously. I came in as the ninth.
Yeah.
Our family came in as the ninth family, so I'm the ninth of the eight families. They, apart from just being cracking people, they had already created a template to say, all right, we're going to move around to each other's farms once every 6 weeks, and we're going to share our difficulties. We're going to encourage each other in the practice of holistic management, because this stuff's not easy. So let's create this quite formal and focused support for one another. And I was lucky enough to join in there, and it has been, phenomenal. Couldn't have really progressed down the path without them. And the reason why I mention that is because everybody says, oh, if you're talking to anyone who's not in agriculture, they say, oh, why wouldn't it? Why isn't everyone doing this kind of thing? And because it kind of makes sense. And if you wanted to ask the question, well, how would you help people explore these ideas? Then, of course, it has to be in a peer group. Or, maybe I say, of course, but not necessarily.
Mm.
But it turns out that anything that people do, you do it better in a gang. You really progress well in a gang. If it's a running group, you progress better.
Funny, I was just talking with John Liu about this yesterday, but with regards to the music camps that he saw and originally wanted to be on as a young guy, that then framed his thinking about doing it applied to ecological restoration, that became his famous, now just 100 plus camps around the world doing it.
Wow. Well, there you go. That it's exactly the same idea. We need to do this together. Life is no fun alone.
Wow.
We have to we have to
Fun.
do it together. And I think that's even the same. Like, the thing that I loved about journalism and the thing that I miss about journalism is being in the program meetings where we would sit around, everyone, all the producers, all the reporters, the presenters, and you'd sit around in a group and you'd all pitch story ideas and then batter them around and adjust them and think of people to interview on them, and come up with new ideas from the original ideas. And that is intoxicating. For me, I love ideas. I'm not the best at follow through. I like I like to get other people to do the follow. Um, yeah. So I really get quite intoxicated by the discussion about the ideas and where they come from and where they go and who's been engaged in them. And
Well, that might
that's
be a natural segue to the instigation of the
Mm.
alliance. So you had an
Mm.
idea. You had an idea at some stage. It's like, who can do the work? Ah, I'll go to these guys.
What about this gang? The alliance. So over the years, I've started to work with a variety of the organisations who I mentioned at the beginning, and have done that because we've got a sort of small philanthropic pool that we use to try and support this work. And so I've had the great fortune to be able to support some of these organisations and meet the people involved. And be on some of the boards and see the work that they're doing. So over quite a few years, we've got to know each other well. There's a really great level of trust. And we all understood that while we were working at the grassroots level, a lot of a lot of the problems that we were working on, they just keep
Yeah,
coming down the pipeline.
right.
And so why wouldn't you pull it together and say, okay, we're all happy working at the grassroots, but wouldn't it be really good if the policymakers knew what we were doing? None of the organisations have that kind of resources to employ a lobbyist, for example, or even
Yes.
time resources to spend time walking the halls of Canberra. So why don't we kind of pool our thinking, because we're all working on the same kinds of things, just different aspects of
Yeah.
it. And so why don't we all pull it together and form an alliance, not a peak body. We don't want to create a whole lot of bureaucracy, but we just want to elevate the work that everybody's already doing and direct a bit more support. And a lot of it because it reduces costs, because it helps with mental health, but because it has all these
Mm.
cost savings. Government need to know about it. I mean, and in some ways they're already doing some of these things, lots of these things. We're just wanting to give it a bit more of a holistic look so that they can get the mycelium going and connect it all together so that it works even better. And so
Right.
that's how we ended up in there. And
Yeah. So what will be the pointy end of how it works? Like, now, do you get a lobbyist as a collective, or what will be the pointy end of how it actually keeps these, I guess, points of dialogue going with the people you had in the room and others, obviously? And I guess in that sense, is it true to say that this is the main reason for being for the alliance? Is that policy regulatory edge?
look, policy elevation is the thing we're after. We don't want to reinvent any wheels. We don't want to get in the way of anybody. We only want to elevate be the loudspeaker for a lot of these good ideas. And I think what we discovered today when we went around and talked to a lot of the pollies is that they're so flat chat on so many
Mm.
things that if you're offering solutions, they're well packaged, well researched, then that's easy for them to use. And they're not sitting there saying, look, don't bring us any ideas. We've got everything set. They're open to being helped to make things better. At least,
Yeah.
perhaps that's my Pollyanna view at the end of
Well, so
end of the
I
day,
think
I
it's fair to
guess.
say at least most people in the world know,
Yeah,
well
right.
intended. So yeah, just make it easy for them and demonstrate a license, and in theory, there's an opportunity.
Yes. And we did have we couldn't have got all this together. We did employ a lobbyist to help us just to figure our way through. And because we also know that there are lobbyists who work for all the industry players.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so if you want a voice in Parliament House, until you know how to make your way and develop your own relationships, you just need somebody to help you figure out how to do it and open the doors.
Yeah, right.
And so, we did.
So what's the broader call to action, I suppose, for even people listening to this? Do we just leave you to it, or is there is there
No,
stuff people can do to back you in?
we've put in a pre-budget submission. We're offering policy ideas. We've got sort of 5 main policy ideas that we're putting forward that include things like supporting the notion of regional hubs. That's some of the work that Food Connect in Brisbane has done a lot on. They've got a whole report called Regenerating the Regions. It's a fully costed program to set up hubs, regional hubs that are based on food hubs, but of course have the flow on effect of regional jobs, regional processing, regional keeping things in that hub area. So you've got these very short supply chains. So getting behind those kind of ideas, we've got a website. You can go and have a look at what we're doing on the website, Regenerative Food and Farming Alliance website. And we will, it's just a start, and we will be, expanding, I suppose. Look, I'm pausing there, I think, because we don't want to be too prescriptive about where we go. And there's already organisations that exist who do some of this work as well, but possibly not the full collaboration that they're working in a particular area. So we want to elevate their work as well. And I think the more members that we end up having, the better. We haven't figured out what our membership would look like, but I
You've got
suspect
another dozen or so sort of around that core 5 at the moment, don't you? I guess while you figure that out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We did canvass pretty widely, particularly with people who'd been in the system for a long time, saying, "Look, we're thinking about this idea. What do you think?" And generally, look, nobody said, "No, don't do that." Everybody said,
Yeah,
"Yep, do it."
there you go.
And so we thought, okay, we'll just get ourselves to this launch, and then we'll figure out where we go after that. So we've got to do that. We've still got to sit down and brainstorm what it's going to look like. But we'll probably do some research. We'll put budget submissions in. We'll help direct existing programs like the one I just suggested, that I just mentioned, that Food Connect is doing. Will help elevate those kind of things. We don't want to duplicate. We just want to elevate. Oh, that's not a bad little tagline.
I'll send you a transcript, Beck. You'll have it on hand. I did want to, before we sign off, I did want to mention one particular line in the material Georgie sent me. If Australia does not urgently address the hidden costs embedded in the agri-food system, up to an estimated $274 billion worth of environmental and health burdens will continue to accumulate. That blows your socks off.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? One of the things that we're calling for is to understand the extent of the real cost of producing our food. So as you know, we've got the National Farmers Federation, who are on track with their $100 billion growth profile for Australian agriculture, which is, impressive, really impressive. And we have to, if we're running with that idea, we also have to know what is the flotsam and jetsam that comes out the back of the growth ship that is going.
They had the landmark health report too, no, about the diabolical state of farmer health and related to that viability. So they're aware of those things too. I wonder if they're tracking that while they're tracking the growth, and if they are one's at the cost of the other, or if they're going together, or that'd be interesting to know.
I don't think that's happening. Certainly not in a way that says, okay, we might be making 100 billion, but at the cost of 150 billion, or at the cost of 90 billion. What
exactly.
is the actual
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the price? But we're not saying, okay, National Farmers Federation, you can't have a goal like that, a growth goal. We know economies run on growth, but there's no point, like in any business, there is no point in saying this is how much money I've made, unless you look at how much did it cost you to
Right.
make that amount of money. And the notion of true cost accounting exists, and that the natural capital. How do you value natural capital? If you grow something and enhance your ecology at the same time, then it's costing you less just by its very nature
Mm,
than if you degrade your natural resource base and produce something.
mm,
So it's simple mathematics, really,
mm.
when you start having that conversation. But it's an incredibly important conversation. It's the
Yeah.
same as the conversation that we're about to have about the food security, national food security strategy.
Yes.
That is a huge issue. The government is about to start consultation on that. And if you bring in, well, what is the cost of ultra processed, ultra high density processed foods on our public health system? How do we quantify that?
Mm,
And there are figures around that. And if we're producing food and someone's making a profit to produce those inputs for that ultra high density food, and then there's a huge cost to the various health departments for that comes out that back end, then that's a crazy cost
yeah.
analysis,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
difficult to do the measurement on it all, but not impossible.
not impossible, exactly. I mean, it's every disaster we put a tag of recovery on it, don't we? And you never quite recover. But I watch multiple in Australia, in Western Australia alone. Let's say Fitzroy Crossing that was up around $500 million repair bill. But go across the Kimberley to Warman, to the Chamberlain River flooding back, I don't know, 15 years ago. Go down the coast to Carnarvon, another 200 million. They were both about that mark. And that mark to never get back to where you were. So, that's not even the cost, let alone then the sort of systemic costs that we're talking about here. So, yeah, it can be done at least to a degree that makes you realise the net gain that we've assumed might be
Mm.
shaky, and that there'd be ways to shore that up. And Beck, on all this, I really look forward to continuing the dialogue, checking in with how this progresses, given that it's I mean, when you put it in terms like that, it's so striking across the board, the need and the opportunity. So if things remain in the way, it'll be fascinating even to see what they end up being, and then responding to that. And then, of course, where the breakthroughs happen will be all the more inspiring. I want to dovetail back to you personally before we sign off in this moment, because I've heard you talk about your personal path, and you talked about a career change from journalism to farming, and then, all this. But career changes can hamstring a lot of people, even be traumatic. Yet you did it. So I'm partly wondering, was that difficult, I guess? And attached to that in a way, you said about your mother selling the farm and how that was a bit of a moment too of like, oh no. How does it feel in the wash up to be living the life you're living with that sort of starting your life, that little heartbreak?
It's I am constantly in a state of gratefulness for where where we've ended up. And a few years ago, AJ, my brother, the other that the brother who
Yeah.
I mentioned, who was particularly traumatized, probably the most traumatized by of us all by the loss of the farm. He bought back 100 acres around. He bought back the farm effectively. It was 1,000 acres back in the day, and he
Wow.
bought back 100 acres of it and the homestead.
Amazing.
And it was a really important kind of moment for us all. I guess it just shows just the depth
Oh,
of people's attachment to land, right? To place. And I remember, and this is a bit tangential for you, but I remember when we were looking for a, a farm and I went to see a bunch of them, and I'd come off them and I think, oh, that's not my place. That's I don't know what that is, but it's not my place. And I then drove down to visit the people who had bought our farm, who were a
hmm,
cracking, wonderful family, and went to visit them and drove up the driveway and had this overwhelming sense of my that this was my place. And
hmm.
it was really the first time that I had an inkling of what it must have been like for Indigenous Australia to be moved off their
Right.
land.
An
And
inkling.
as a journalist, I'd encountered the notion that a First Nations person not living on their land didn't have authority on that land. But I hadn't really known, I hadn't felt it in my guts what that meant. And I came to start understanding of it. Obviously I'm not understanding it at that level. But so there've been some profound things that have happened like that on the journey. But it wasn't a difficult thing to go from one to the other. I thought I was going to go from all those crackingly great people in those story meetings, who are, highly intelligent, highly educated, highly articulate, for coming up with great ideas all the time. And I thought, oh well, those kind of, I guess that won't be the kind of people I'll be meeting. Other kinds of people.
Hmm.
And look, they've turned out to be just like that.
Ah.
People full of great ideas, people doing amazing things, people challenging you. So it's been, and I've been able to go down the deep dive of saying, wow, there's been, philosophers writing on there. There's all the great writers, as you would have read, like you mentioned, David Fleming, so many, Aldo Leopold,
Hmm.
Howard. I mean, I just love the collection of writers who, Braiding Sweetgrass
No.
was, now I've forgotten her,
Robin Wall Kimmerer.
yes,
Hmm.
Robin Wall Kimmerer. So many. Oh, and look, hang on, we'll just give Josh a plug here.
Josh Gilbert. Yeah.
Yeah, Josh Gilbert's beautiful Australia's Agricultural Identity and Australian Yarn. A beautiful book. There's so many people really
Yes.
wrestling with, what is our culture of connection to this land and the way we grow our food, because that's what we do on it. What is it, and is it right? And let's challenge it, and let's read as far and wide as we can to see how other people have thought about it.
Hmm.
And the great cultures have thought about it, our own long culture that of our First Nations people who've been thinking about it for thinking and living. And we are on the banks of the Murrumbidgee,
Yeah.
and there is an incredible Indigenous history, of course, along the waterways of our nation, and near Gundagai, at Gundagai, the great trauma of the Gundagai floods, when the Indigenous population had been insisting to the locals that they not settle on the river flats. And then a great flood came through and killed, 70 odd people. And two young Indigenous men spent something like 36 hours out in their canoes, saving people out of trees, off the tops of buildings. And they're celebrated in the town, and renowned. But that sort of, and we live alongside some of the ancestors
Hmm.
of some of the descendants, I beg your pardon, of people who were saved by those guys.
Yeah, wow.
So it's, it's close, and there is so many questions we need to keep asking, so many stories we need to keep sharing. You would know, Jill Sandbrook.
Yes.
Jill
She
has
just
been.
sent me a few photos of your launch, in fact.
Did she?
Yeah.
Well, of course, she's working on a project mapping the rivers at the moment with First Nations inspiration and input. Always working on something new, Jill. So
Yes.
there is
She's on
just
our river
such.
journey too. I'm sure she won't mind me saying, coming up
Yes.
Murray River Paddle, which of course the
Oh,
Murrumbidgee
yes,
flows
I'm
into.
so jealous about that.
Yeah. Next time, Beck. Next time.
But anyway, I mean, there is. I recommend a career change for everyone, because you go through, you start from the beginning. You've got no idea what the hell you're doing, and if you're curious and happy to ask stupid questions, or any questions, of course, we know that no question is stupid. But if you're happy to start at the beginning, then what a fabulous thing it is. What a fabulous ride it is. And the people that you meet,
Well said.
it's been joyful.
Well said. Yes, yes. So, what might be the tune you'll put on in the car when you're driving home this evening, Beck? And you'll be feeling the wind in your hair and all that's been achieved here and all that might be achieved yet.
All that might be, I think, is the
Right.
is the question. Can we be useful? I think my my mother. We used to sit in the small Huron Creek church. I think we had the second pew on the left. There were 7 of us squeezed in there, and not many people in the church, of course. And when we would be singing hymns, Mum would just go ahead and sing the descant to all the hymns. And I wasn't old enough then to be embarrassed. I was just in awe at her singing the descant.
I love it.
And so, I've always loved singing and been in choirs and so forth,
Yeah.
and have had a lot of fun. Had a little detour into music theatre for a while, and went in lots
No.
of amateur musicals, because music is just the joy, isn't it? It's just,
Oh,
boy, it's the fuel. And so, of course, lots of popular music culture that I've followed over the years. But the one song I think that is really appropriate to now is a John Rutter choral composition called "For the Beauty of the Earth." Play it and weep. It is so beautiful, and I first heard it because the Steiner School that our daughter Ella was at, the Rudolph Glenean Steiner School in Sydney, they had it as this sort of informal school song that they had a big school concert every year, and it was the last song that they would sing en masse with the whole junior school and senior school. They'd come together and they would sing it, and it is just such a beautiful song. I put it on. I do. I literally weep when I put it on. You
yeah.
play it, and I will. I'll play it on the way home, and I'll cry.
Yeah. Be safe. What of all the songs you used to sing or still do did you love the most?
Oh, probably. I mean, some of the fun music theatre songs. Look, I've sung in lots of church choirs, mass for
Yeah.
small, very amateur choirs, and I love singing harmony with anyone.
Oh.
If anyone wants to sing another line, and I can sit and I can hold another line, there's something about the harmonics of that goes right to your heart, and it doesn't really matter how the quality of your union. But if you can get some of the chords, if you're both singing some of the chords alongside each other, then it's fantastic. So love singing parts with somebody else. But probably some of the music theatre songs. I don't know if you think of some of those. There's such character songs like the Chicago. The name on everybody's lips is gonna be Roxy.
Love it.
They're just naughty, fun, great songs to sing.
100%, full of character. Yeah, keep going.
The lady raking in the chips is gonna be Roxy.
That's awesome. You do it well, Beck. Still got it.
Thanks. I haven't actually, but I'll let you can believe it.
You'll be on the highlights reel at the end of the year with that now. Good on you for going there. Oh, Beck, it's been so good to speak and to see you again and to speak, and so good to see this launch, no? It feels like a cracking thing to start the year with, amongst some other cracking things bubbling up around the place too. So it's next steps all the way, and power to you.
Yeah, well, and right back at you, AJ, for all that you do. It's the stories that we share with one another that keep us all going. And all those stories that you guys are going to be sharing as you paddle down the Murray will be really beautiful. So, really thank you. Thank you for your work. And thank you to everybody who's having a try in whatever corner of the earth that they're managing.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better.
Thanks to them.
That was Rebecca Gorman from Parliament House in Canberra for the launch of the Regenerative Food and Farming Alliance. And while we're talking systemic change, people are of course grappling with the costs of inadequate systems right now. Following up on my dedication to some of those folk last week, some listeners and supporters of the pod have helped bring together a fundraiser via the brilliant Australian Communities Foundation to directly and quickly assist where the most need is in the wake of the recent Longwood fires over east. I'd like to highlight that here and invite your support if you're able. That's for the Strathbogie Disaster Relief Fund. With great thanks, links in the show notes. With great thanks too to you generous supporting listeners for making this episode possible, including new paid subscriber, a young man I met over East a few years ago, Gecko Garvey, along with this humbling message. G'day AJ, firstly, thank you. Your podcast has been such a source of hope, inspiration, entertainment, and as you'll soon hear, has played a part in my journey to becoming a farmer. And congrats on reaching the decade milestone. Hope you and your podcast keeps flourishing. My name is Gecko, and I've been listening to your podcast for the last 4 years. I actually met you when you came to Brisbane to speak with Jacob Birch and Zena Cumpston. Gecko even remembered that became episode 157. You also did a podcast, he said, with Luke Growers, who coincidentally, or not, is where I'm working and living now. Thanks again for another year of beautiful stories, and I think it's about time I joined you on Patreon. Oh, Gecko, thanks. Wonderful to hear from you and count on your support. See you in WA soon, perhaps. Okay, till next week, the music you're hearing is Regeneration by Amelia Barden. My name's Anthony James. Thanks so much for listening.